everyone, welcome to Friday Hangout with the BL team. I don't think we have a name for it yet, but we've decided that we're going to pick a particular day where we bring up particular legal issues that we think you should be aware of as a business owner. And for today, I want us to talk about something really interesting. Pardon my manners. You should meet those who I have here. I just assumed that you know everybody here. So this is Sarah. Sarah just joined us. I introduced Dara to you guys, I think last week or so. Yeah, so I'm yet to do a formal introduction for Sarah, but Sarah is a legal practitioner. She works here, and you're going to be seeing more of her. I would do a special video where you get to meet her directly. That's not what this video is about. Here, we just want to teach you something basic. And of course, you've met Dara. Meanwhile, Dara gave me a bottle of wine because nobody's going to church tomorrow. Thank you. Okay, so today I want us to look at something. You know that election is coming, right? Yes. Next year is going to be very uncertain. You agree? I mean, we don't know who is coming up. We don't know who is going to be our next leader.
Yes.
And whatever happens, next year will have an impact on almost all aspects of life, including business. In fact, especially business. So, of course, we are a firm that takes proactive steps towards ensuring that you remain protected in your business. And so we decided to talk about a particular legal tool. I will call it a legal tool that you can use when entering into business transactions with other people so as to protect yourself, especially because you don't know what will happen, right? Yes. Anytime from now. Next year is coming, there will be a lot of political unrest, right? So but of course life must go on, businesses will go on, people will continue to enter into contracts even in the midst of war. It happens all the time. But one thing you cannot afford not to do is to protect yourself when entering into those contracts. And so we're going to be talking about force majeure clause and how we can help you protect your interest as a contracting party in business. Right? Are you guys ready?
Yes.
So basically, they're going to be asking me some questions about force majeure clause and how it protects you, the business owner, and why you should have it in your agreements. And then I'll answer the questions and hopefully you get to learn one or two things. Ready?
Yes.
Okay, so who's shooting? Sarah.
Hi. Now, majorly we want to know what this force majeure clause is all about and how does it protect the owners of business in the event of any unforeseen circumstances.
Okay, great. So force majeure clause are provisions in the contract that exclude the contracting parties from liabilities in the event that certain things occur, things that are beyond the control of the contracting parties. Emphasis on beyond their control. So if things happen and there are things that you should have expected as an ordinary business owner, every business has incidental risk associated with their businesses, right?
Yes.
So if you claim that something has occurred and that it is beyond your control, and we look deep into that thing that has occurred, and we find that in fact it is not beyond your control, that it is a necessary part of, like it is what is expected, that the risk associated with your business, with your line of business, then your claim for force majeure will not hold.
Okay.
And that means that you will be liable for the acts, for the breach of contract, for whatever. So to answer your second question, what force majeure clause does basically is to protect contracting parties from liabilities. Right, so Dara, the question.
Okay. So what is the difference between an insurance policy that the company should have and a force majeure clause in your contractual agreement? Since they are protecting from unforeseeable events.
Well, like you rightly said, the force majeure is something both of the contracting parties have to agree on.
Okay.
Do you understand? Like, what are the possible, maybe the question should have been what are force majeure clauses? Let's just quickly ask that, right? So things like fire outbreak, things like government policy, things like change in regulation, things like pandemic, epidemic. There was what's that thing that really drove the whole world into a state of confusion? Coronavirus, exactly. There's coronavirus. People were unable to travel. Imagine if you had a job to do like a contract with service to provide somewhere else, but you were struck down with coronavirus, would it be possible for you to perform your So insurance policies cannot really cater for those kind of things per se. They are only going to be related to business assets and all of that. But this you're talking about, I'm unable to perform. You're saying I'm unable to perform because of this particular thing, and it is not within my control. Do you understand?
Yes.
So before you can claim, just like I said, before you can claim something is as a result of force majeure, it has to be something that is totally, that was not expected. It's something that, you know, in law we say reasonable standard.
Yeah.
There's no reasonability in force majeure, and you can't say this is when it will. So a couple of months back, with the former BLT, we had an opportunity to review, you know, contract with one of the major banks and our client, a fintech company. I don't want to mention the name of the bank, but it's one of those new generation major banks, and their legal team, we put the force majeure clause, and their legal team were insisting on, oh, please put the time frame up during which, you know, this. And I said no, it defeats the purpose of force majeure. There is no time frame. You can't say this is when it will be over. So you can't say, oh, we'll resume service after this. Do you understand? There is no time. You can't say 6 months or 3 months and all of that. Otherwise, it will not be a force majeure clause. So if it happens that the event that is leading to that is taking up to 2 years, for that 2 years, you're excluded from liability.
Okay, sorry, another question. Do you have to detail foreseeable events, or you can just leave it open?
No, please don't leave it open. Never leave it open. When it comes to contract, it has to be as detailed as possible. All the possible events. In fact, beyond stating the possible events, you have to state how notice of, you know, the occurrence of the event. So you don't just keep quiet and say, oh, there's been a force majeure event. You should know. You need to notify the other party that you are unable to go ahead or fulfill your obligation because of this event. And then you need to clearly state what the events are. Then, in fact, the contract has to now further state what happens after notice has been given. So if you're preparing the contract and you're going to put that force majeure, which is a must anyway, like going forward, remember we're talking about what will happen in 2023, we're so unsure, but you as a business owner, life is going to go on, your business is going to go on, you're going to be entering into contracts, but you need to protect yourself. So your clauses have to be as detailed as possible.
Okay, so what about businesses that have already kicked off and maybe they have gone into some contracts now without this force majeure clauses? What step can they take to incorporate these clauses?
Okay.
In case the contract runs over 2023 and beyond.
Okay, so are you considering a situation where there was no actual document?
Yes.
So we're talking about oral agreements.
Yes.
So if I hear you correctly, you're asking, does oral agreement, does the force majeure clause apply to oral contracts?
Yes.
That's a good question. That's a good question, because I mean, she's saying if you started already. I think that the reason why we advocate for putting everything in black and white on paper is because both parties are deemed to have accepted the terms of what they signed, right? So you're deemed to have accepted the terms. That's why you must never also sign a contract without reviewing. So if you willingly went into a contract and there is no documentation whatsoever, you're going to take responsibility for whatever comes out of this. I doubt that you'll be able to claim force majeure, except if the other person is not going to challenge you, right? So the whole essence of having the proper contract so that you don't start arguing, no, but you know there was this, you know there was coronavirus, I was sick, I had an accident, I couldn't move. Do you understand? Yes. So like you literally have to, you will not start dragging, but you save yourself from all those stress if you have a proper contract in place. So to advise people who are in that category, I don't think it is ever too late actually. So even if you started and you see that okay, there was no contract, there was no documentation, you could bring it up at any point. You could bring up the issue of documenting your transactions, your agreement at any point. Especially if the other person won't. I don't think there's anybody who should have an issue with documentation.
Yes.
Yeah.
And for those that have like a documented agreement, if the clause is not in the agreement, they can always update their
Exactly. So one of the clauses we always put in our contract, you may have seen it, is that these terms are subject to review.
Yes.
Do you understand? Subject to review. So if you feel like your contract is not comprehensive enough, or there's no force majeure clause as she has said, after watching this video, please go and call your legal officer and say, please check that contract that we have with that person. Is there a force majeure clause? And if there is no force majeure clause, what should you do? Update to the force majeure clause. It is for your own protection.
Yes.
Yeah. Any other question?
Not for now.
This has been a very interesting session. Yes or yes?
Yes.
Like
Yes.
I practically enjoyed myself. So I had to make promises, but I can tell you that we'll be doing this more often.
Yes.
Maybe a Friday. I think Friday might be a good
Yes,
time.
Friday.
Yes. In addition to our weekly live sessions, we're going to also be having trainings. I think we'll kickstart all of that from next week when I'm fully back to the office. So guys, thank you. It's
Thanks
been
so
really
much.
interesting.
Yes.
Before you go, what advice do you have for them?
The advice I will have for mostly those people that don't have the force majeure clauses is to don't take the chances.
Did you hear that?
Go right away, get the force majeure clause, because nobody's certain what is going to happen. It might even
Exactly.
happen next week. So just don't take the chance. Don't
Exactly.
leave your contract to chances.
Exactly.
My advice is you need to document every single agreement that you have.
Exactly.
Yes. Do away with oral agreements. First, say no to gentleman's agreements.
Yes.
Do you understand? Put everything in black and white. And my advice ultimately would be, if you're running a business, if you're building a business, you cannot maneuver your way around startup legal.
Yes.
So you need a legal support team, and you need one that understands the basics of like running a business. Do you understand? Not just any category of lawyer. You actually need people that have experience with handling business issues so that they can properly guide you. All right, guys, thank you for coming, and we'll do this